Tonight's forecast. A freeze is coming.
Before I begin, I want to apologise for the delay in this week's video. It's because, well, I had a cold. And I didn't think you wanted to hear me coughing and spluttering. Anyway, I'm going to make up for it next week. So, on with the review.
Don't be so gloomy. After all, it's not that awful. Well, what the fella said. In Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace, and what did that produce? The cuckoo clock.
The Third Man, from director Carol Reed, with a screenplay by Graham Greene, is considered by many, myself included, to be one of the greatest films of all time. But it wasn't the first great post-war masterpiece from director Carol Reed. That honour goes to a film from 2 years earlier, a film that would win the first BAFTA for Best British Film, and a film that today, if you pardon the pun, has been oddly forgotten in the wake of The Third Man in the decades that followed. I'm talking, of course, of Odd Man Out. So, what did I think? On a cold, clear winter's day in an unnamed city in Northern Ireland, although it's obviously Belfast, Johnny McQueen, played by James Mason, local leader of an unnamed Irish nationalist organisation, leads a payroll robbery on a local mill. When the raid goes wrong and an employee killed, a mortally wounded Johnny, abandoned by his men, is forced to navigate the labyrinthine streets and alleyways of the city, encountering the best and worst of humanity as he struggles to get back to the safe house and Kathleen, played by Kathleen Ryan, the woman he loves. Looking back nearly 80 years on, it's hard to understand just how groundbreaking Odd Man Out truly was. Up to this point in British cinema, Ireland was seen as little more than a background location, with Irish politics and Britain's past role in them rarely covered. Even in films that were considered serious dramas, the Irish, at best, were portrayed as light-hearted, humorous. At worst, simple comic relief in films such as Will Hayes' Oh, Mr. Porter.
To William Porter, that's me, from his fellow workers on the occasion of his promotion to station master at Buggleskelly. What's that he said?
This gentleman is the new station master for Buggleskelly.
Poor man. And him a stranger. Why, what's wrong with it?
It's a brave man, the char. No chicken child a man will walk abroad there after dark.
Is it damp or something?
Did you ever hear tell of One-Eyed Joe, the Phantom Miller?
No, I never follow greyhounds.
But in the aftermath of the Second World War, Odd Man Out took a new approach, portraying the situation in Northern Ireland in a more realistic light than ever before. Adapted from the 1945 novel of the same name by its author F.L. Green and Journey's End playwright R.C. Sheriff.
You say it's a long time since you last saw him.
Well, nearly a year ago.
You know, Raleigh, you mustn't expect to find him quite the same.
Oh?
You may find he's a bit quick-tempered.
Green's novel took a dim view of the nationalist movement. The screenplay, however, showed a nuanced view of the political situation by not making the struggle between nationalist groups and the authorities the central theme of the story, but instead focusing on the city and its people as they live day to day, trying to avoid getting caught up in the fight.
I'm going now. The thing is settled for you and you won't have to worry.
What you going to do?
Open the door and I'll go out and never trouble you again.
At no point does Odd Man Out condone the actions of the organisation, a veiled reference to the IRA in order to avoid controversy and the wrath of the British film censors. Often in the film, the organisation is less a group of self-proclaimed freedom fighters, more a group of incompetent gangsters.
The whole crowd of us have been lifted.
Back up, Pep! Back up quickly!
Get on out, you, and fetch him over.
He's dead!
Get out the pair of you. You told me to hold the car, now you just sit there.
Go on, man, will you reverse? Reverse!
But neither do the authorities come away as heroes, portrayed with a less than sympathetic eye as they are taunted by children on the street for failing to capture Johnny.
Stand up to get Johnny McQueen. Can I have the 1,000 pound reward if I catch Johnny?
While a blackthorn stick-bearing police inspector, played by Dennis O'Dea, who leads the hunt for Johnny, seems to have an understanding for Kathleen. But any sympathies he may have will not sway him from his ruthless hunt for the man she loves. Miles away from the avuncular personification of the friendly policeman we would see a few years later in Dixon of Dock Green.
I believe you know.
While James Mason's Johnny McQueen is a far cry from the traditional film noir tough guy leading man of the time, Mason, who had become a star of British cinema during the war, known for his sneering anti-heroes and villains in what became known as Gainsborough dramas, had only been cast as Johnny after Stuart Granger had turned the role down, to Granger's later reportedly eternal regret. In a performance that would catapult Mason to international stardom, his Johnny McQueen is a man, although still loyal to the cause, behind the facade of his soft-spoken confidence and rueful smile is a man who has become weary, haunted by the life he has led, and doubtful of the organisation's methods.
Your heart's not in this job, Johnny.
The film becomes a parable full of religious imagery as a dying Johnny, full of doubt, full of regret, becomes almost a Christ-like figure on his final journey to the cross, as he touches briefly the lives of those he happens upon. From a couple who in a stolen moment of unsure passion find Johnny in an abandoned air raid shelter, to the drunken artist Lukey, played by Robert Newton, who, desperate to capture the moment of death on canvas, holds Johnny captive, but fails to realise or even see the moment for what it is when it comes. All playing out in the deft hands of director Reed and cinematographer Robert Krasker, turning the city into a noir-filled Dickensian world lit by chiaroscuro lighting in nightscapes of shadow and light, illuminated by street lamps or the headlights of cars. A world of dark, cobbled alleyways and shadows of those who hunt Johnny through a city of bombed-out buildings. A world filled with characters which come to life with the aid of a cast outside of Mason was made up of some of the finest actors Dublin had to offer. There are no harsh Belfast accents here. Each one bringing their best, from Cyril Cusack playing the gutless driver who deserts Johnny, to a young Dan O'Herlihy, a man who 40 years later would play his most recognised role.
Dick, I'm very disappointed.
Here plays a young blowhard on his first and last job. Each performance, each character, be it a defiant grandmother full of regret, to Kathleen herself, who is willing to do the unthinkable to save the man she loves, shows a humanity and a regret that is haunting.
This is different. He's killed a man, and he must pay the penalty.
Rather than that, I'd take his life myself.
Child, you mustn't say such things.
Order. Order! Order!
I will not argue with anyone who says The Third Man is one of the greatest films ever made. As I said, it's one of my favourites and is a behemoth of cinema. But Odd Man Out is quite possibly Reed's masterpiece, with a finale that plays out in a blanket of snow, both inevitable and tragic, and yet, in an attempt to once again get around the censors of the day, ends up with a beauty and poetry that will remain with you days after the last credit has rolled. Odd Man Out can be found on all formats and online, and as I always ask, if you haven't seen it already, why the hell not? Go watch it.
Please, sir, I want some more. More? All right, stop it. Stop it right there. Go on, fill up the bowl.
And if you liked this episode of So What Did I Think and want to see more, please click like and subscribe. Remember, always subscribe. Thanks for watching.